So you studied value for a long time, and now you can crank out a sphere with direct light, shadow, bounce light, ambient occlusion, and it looks great. Now, you want a color. You say to yourself something like, oh, I want a green ball, so you paint it green. Now you want the shadow, so you pick out a darker version of that color, paint it in, lighten it up a little for the bounce light, and it looks muddy. So you look at other artists to fix it, and maybe you hear something like shadows are blue or shadows are cooler. So you make them blue or just colder. But it still doesn't look right. Stop! In this video, I'm going to show you how to figure out your color for your light and your shadows. When you first start delving into color, you'll probably hear something of RGB, RYB, CMYK color wheels, but what do these mean? These color wheels are wheels that focus on specific colors to be their primaries. That's the main colors you deviate all the secondary colors from. In the RGB color wheel, the primaries are red, green, and blue. RYB, which is what I generally use, is very simple, and it's what most artists start out with: red, yellow, and blue. CMYK is a wheel that uses cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which is another word for black. This wheel is generally used in printers because you can get a much more vibrant and get almost every color you want from that. Other wheels have issues with getting brown if you mix too much of the primaries. This wheel is good for that, but in this video I'm mostly going to be focused on the wheel I primarily use, which is the RYB wheel. As I mentioned before, the RYB wheel has 3 primaries: red, yellow, and blue. You get the secondary colors by mixing 2 of the primaries together. Red and blue makes purple, blue and yellow makes green, and yellow and red makes orange. If you mix a secondary and a primary, you get something called a tertiary. These are colors that are like orange, but it has more red, or purple that has more blue. So generally, the color will be kind of a hyphenated version of the 2 of those. So orange and red is red-orange, green and yellow, yellow-green. From this, we can already see that colors can have a huge influence on each other. Simply by adding just a little bit of yellow to green, you now get a yellowish green. This will come in handy when mixing color and light. So if you continue all this mixing, primaries, secondaries, tertiaries, you'll eventually have a fully fleshed out color wheel that you get when you open your drawing application. Speaking of, in digital painting, there are a few types of color wheels: a square, a triangle, and a circle. With each wheel, you have a circle outside that picks the hue. The color wheel on the inside focuses on the hue, saturation, and value. Real quick, the hue is just the overall color, red, yellow, blue. Saturation is how pure it is. If it's more saturated, it's, more red, and if you desaturate, then it's a gray color. And value is just how light and dark it is. With the square color wheel in the digital application, as you go up, it adds white and therefore lightens it. As you go down, it adds black, so it darkens it. Going left desaturates it, and if you go right, you add saturation. With the circle, saturation seems to be on the very outermost side of it, and you control the value or the saturation depending on which one you picked from a bar above it. As you go inwards, it lightens or darkens, depending on the circle you picked. With a triangle, which is what I prefer to use in Corel Painter, you choose the hue on the outer layer, go to the right for saturation, top side is for lightness, down is for darkening, and left is graying. A key thing to keep in mind is color influence. If you take yellow and add a bit of red, you get an orange. The amount of influence the red has, i.e. the more red involved, obviously the redder it gets. To show how I envision color influence, I'm going to bring over this color wheel. At the outermost part of the circle, it's most saturated. Real quick, just so I don't confuse anyone, this wheel I made by bringing the colors towards white. That's how I lightened them. If you actively started turning this purple towards the grays, you could see that it looks more like this. Then it heads towards grays before landing on this completely white center. I like to think of this as a gate or door. If the base color of the object is fairly saturated over here, and the light color is over here on the other side, it's going to grab its vacuum and try to pull it. But since the base color is super saturated, it's strong and not going to get pulled very far anywhere. If the light is super strong though, it can actually beat the base color strength and drag it over, either completely to its light color or just a lot more. The movement across the color wheel also depends on where the colors trying to influence each other are. If you have a saturated red base color and you have a yellow light color on the other side trying to influence it, they're both very close together on the wheel, so the base color will mostly keep its saturation, but still drift towards the yellow, becoming a sort of orange. If you take that same saturated red base color and have the light color on the opposite side, the light will have to drag it towards that gate, or otherwise desaturate it. You don't have to make it go all the way to gray, just a little bit. If that color is really saturated, you can also just add a bit of blue to make the red like a violet color. If it's in the mid-range of saturation, you can just desaturate it and it'll look cooler. If the base color is desaturated already fairly, then it's already at that door, and the light color can just open it up and yoink it over to its side fairly easily. Cool thing I learned about color desaturation and color temperature is that a warm color desaturated will look cool, and a cool desaturated color will look warm. I've seen some scenarios personally where this didn't really seem to be the case, and I'm not exactly sure why, but generally that's how it works. This actually is what happens when you see the whole, oh, look at this blue, what kind of blue is this? No, it's actually a desaturated orange. That's because the gray-orange is opening up that door and looking at the blues on the opposite side, so your brain just continues that motion and fully thinks it's blue. The direct light isn't going to be able to hit the shadow, so it obviously can't use its influence on that. So how do you get color in the shadow? The answer is ambient light. So I know last video I said ambient light is just weak light. That's partly true, but I recently looked at a Marco Bucci video and he was talking about how ambient light is just an umbrella term for reflected light, diffuse light, bounce light, etc. So that's also probably more helpful than just thinking of it as just general weak light. Anyway, indirect light is light that is scattered around through diffusion, bounce, or weak lights. So you know when you look outside and there's blue and shadows on like a nice sunny day, and you're like, where did that come from? Hey, look up. That blue dome that is our sky throws down weak blue ambient light. It'll hit any surface pointing up. But that's not the only way color can get into shadows. There's also light that can bounce off a wall, object, or the ground, and then back into the shadow. The color of the direct light will hit the object and then bounce a weaker, saturated version of that back into the shadow. Remember when I said how much a color can influence each other is based on how close they are together? This applies to the shadow too. If you have a yellow ball and are having something like purple reflected back into it, you can see that yellow and purple are further away from each other on the color wheel. So to get that reflected purple in here, you're going to have to drag yellow towards that door, or otherwise into the grays, then kind of tilt the hue towards purple. If both or one of the colors are desaturated, then they're already close together because they're near that door. Again, the key word is color influence, not complete domination. Taking all that we learned, let's take a ball and now color it. I'm going to make it green, so the first thing we're going to do is just throw in a generic green. This is the part of the stage where you determine how saturated you want to make it. Now we've got to separate the light and the dark. If you're just starting out, you can just make the shadow side a darker version of the green as a placeholder. Now, what color do you want the light to be? A warm yellow, a blue? For this demonstration, I'm going to use a light yellow color, symbolizing like a lamp. Remembering the whole bit with color influence, the yellow light is going to try to pull that green towards it with the mighty vacuum. This green is fairly saturated, along with the colors to be influenced being closer together, so you're not really going to lose any saturation. Instead, it's going to become a yellow-green. When it comes to halftones are when the form is turning away from the light. So this means the light won't be able to have as much as an influence, so the base color pops out more. Now we get to the shadow. First thing to do is to examine your surroundings. The yellow light from that lamp is going to hit the table, mix with the similar colors, and then bounce it back up into the bottom of the ball, making this part of the shadow a yellowish type of color. Make sure not to make it too bright, it's still shadow after all. If you were outside with this ball, the top part here would be hit with the skylight and make it a bit bluish. But other than that, we have our fully shaded and colored ball. Color and light is tough, especially when you start trying to put all of this into practice. I especially had issues with value. I'd color it and then find out the shadow wasn't dark enough or the light was more mid-value instead of bright, so it brought around a lot of frustration. This is generally why I recommend studying color and light together. When starting out, of course, I do just recommend that you figure out value first, because that is the most important part to make a form read. So separating the two and studying them independently is a great idea. But after you get the gist of both, I would bring them back together, and instead of thinking like gray, black, and white, think bright or a light yellow, dark green or dark blue, and something like mid-purple for something like halftones. In the end, color and light is very fun, but as a lot of subjects in arts, it's still hard to understand sometimes. That's why learning from people who know their stuff is a game changer. I learned, and I'm still learning, a lot from color masters like Marco Bucci, James Gurney, Tiffany Mang, and Lighting Mentor. Check them out, they helped me a ton on my journey with color and light. In the meantime, I hope my video helped. It's sort of just a regurgitation of stuff I learned from the people I just mentioned. Otherwise, I got 2 other videos on light for you to check out, and if you like them, I'm planning on making many other videos like this about stuff I learned in art. So if that's something you're interested in, come on over to my YouTube channel.